Hello again. My name is Alexander Khairallah. I'm an oral surgeon and a maxillofacial radiologist. I'm also a diplomat of the European Academy of Dentomaxillofacial Radiologists and a member of the British Academy of Implant and Restorative Dentistry. I'm also the head of service of the imaging department at the Dental School of the Lebanese University. Our subject for today is about the 3-point radiological template. Dear friends, failing to plan 3D implant positioning can lead to lots of troubles during surgeries and the prosthetic reconstruction. 3D imaging will help us in planning a 3D positioning of our implants, knowing our distance and the topography of our region of interest. Radiological and surgical templates will help us in copying our 3D planning into the patient's mouth. There's lots of radiological guides using per implantologist. We are going to talk about one of them, the 3 points radiological guide. Why we call it 3 points radiological guide? Because in order to draw a tooth, we need at least 3 points. One crestal, one buccal, and one occlusal. And those 3 points can be easily seen on a cross-section of a cone beam CT image. Dear colleagues, in order to fabricate the guide, we must take an impression and pour it into plaster. Then the prosthodontist will replace the missing teeth according to the 3D positioning of the future crowns. An SX is done over the model and the missing teeth are filled with cold resin. With around 1 mm burrs, 3 holes are drilled and filled with gutta percha. One in the central fossa, one at the level of the gum, and one at the buccal maximum of convexity. A cone beam CT is done. The patient will be wearing the radiographical guide. After inspection of the frontal cuts, the precise position of the future implant as planned according to the final prosthesis can be easily seen. On the cross-sectional cuts, the length and diameter of implants can be easily calculated using the ruler of the 3D software. Dear colleagues, in order to succeed our planning, the 3 gutta percha points must be on the same axis. This is how we can see them on a 1 mm cross-sectional cut. This is why nowadays we are using transparent orthodontic resin. As you can see in this X-ray, the 3 points are not on the same axis and we cannot see them on one cut. In order to copy our planning into the patient mouth, we need to transform our radiological template into what we call a surgical directional template. Before doing so, I would like to introduce the BADE principle, which is the bone anatomy in relation to the implant direction. If both parameters are positive, we have a success in our implant procedure and our future prosthesis. Let's see the 3 scenarios. The first one where the bone anatomy is positive. As you can see over here, we have lots of bone, and the implant direction is positive, according to the position of the final prosthesis. The second scenario, where the bone anatomy is negative, as you can see, we don't have enough bone, but the implant direction is positive. And the third scenario, where the bone anatomy is positive, as we can see, we have lots of bone, but the implant direction is negative. In the first case, where both are positive, it's a straightforward case. If we follow the occlusal and the crestal points, our drill will be into the bone, and our future implant will be into the bony envelope. As you can see over here, a tunnel will be made through drilling the occlusal and the crestal points. This is the future implant direction. And this is how our radiological template will be transformed into what we call a surgical directional template. The guide will be positioned into the patient's mouth, and if we follow the tunnel, will be directly into the bony envelope. Sometimes, when we are dealing with a small patient's mouth opening and posterior teeth, we'll have a problem whenever we are trying to insert our burr into the tunnel. This is why we are drilling a tunnel buccally until we touch the occlusal and the crestal points. Another view where we can see the direction of the tunnel buccally until we will touch the occlusal and the crestal points. This is the final result. The guide will be positioned into the patient's mouth. The axis of insertion of the drill will be buccal to lingual first, then crestal to apical, and the osteotomy is initiated. The second scenario is when the bone anatomy is negative and the implant direction is positive. If we follow the occlusocrestal direction, and since the bone anatomy is not adequate, the final implant will be positioned out of the bony envelope. So we need to have a bone graft before doing our implant. Let's see a clinical case. These are the cuts of a 33 years old male. As we can see, we have a knife edge crest, and the bone graft must be programmed before the implant positioning. Clinically, 2 chips of bone were collected from the genial region and fixed at the bony defect by screws. The gaps were filled with artificial bone. In this slide, we can easily see the 3D rendering of the initial situation. Look at the bone crestal widths. And in this one, we can see the new crestal width. At this point, the case is transformed into a double positive bone anatomy and implant direction like the first scenario. The third scenario is when the bone anatomy is positive and the implant direction is negative. As you can see over here, we have lots of bone, but if we follow the occlusal to crestal points, the implant will be placed, in this case, more lingually. A clinical case, as you can see, on the cross-section cut, the implant is placed lingually and not into the bony envelope. A 3D rendering image where we can see the wrong positioning of our implant. As you can see on this cross-sectional cut, The two occlusal and crestal points are lingual to the bony envelope. The two green occlusal and crestal points are the exact one. If you follow them, will be directly into the bony envelope. So by using the measurements feature into the 3D software, we can calculate the distance. Let's say it's 2 millimeters. Instead of cutting the buccal tunnel till the gutta percha points, we'll cut it till the green point, which means 2 millimeters less buccally. In this slide, we can easily see the difference between a full tunnel till the gutta percha points and another one 2 millimeters less buccally. In this case, we'll follow the new 2 points, okay? And our implant will be into the bony envelope. And as you can see, if we follow now the occlusal and crestal points, we'll be directly into the bony envelope after placing our implant. Dear colleagues, finally I can say, great people don't do different things. They do the same things, but differently. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can easily email me at alexanderkhairallah@hotmail.com and alexanderkhairallah@gmail.com.